Hello everyone, I'd like to share with you this lesson regarding the human cells and the animal cells. The first part of this lesson that you need to know is regarding the parts of the chromosome. And to give you an introduction, the human cells contains deoxyribonucleic acid or the DNA. This is the genetic material inside the chromosome of the cell nucleus. So the question is, where do cells comes from? So this is from the cells of the parent's DNA that are transmitted to offspring for continuity of life. And take note that the cell of human or an animal cell is a eukaryotic cell. So talking about eukaryotic cell, it means that it has complex parts and complete organelles. In this one is an example of the human cell. Okay, you will see here as the nucleus, okay, is the center or the control center of the cell, and inside of that is the DNA. It contains decoded information that passes on every single inherited characteristic. So around that or surrounding that is the endoplasmic reticulum. So this is the smooth and rough tubes that move and share materials made by the cell. So other organelles, so you have a mitochondrion. So this produces energy for cells to use by breaking down substances during oxidative metabolism. Golgi complex, I guess, actually collects packages and distributes molecules made in the cell. You also have the ribosome, the vacuole, peroxisome, peroxisome, okay, and on the other hand. So you have the centrole, the cell membrane, okay, which is the outermost part, and inside of that, okay, where organelles are all like floating, is the so-called cytoplasm, the lysosome, and of course the whole of the human cell or the animal cell. You need to focus regarding the parts of chromosome. So here in this figure, you have the chromosome, and it is actually enlarged. Okay, if you're going to take a look at the left side, okay, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cells, okay, and one of the cells are actually opened or viewed. So there are chromosomes, okay, and one of them enlarged, okay, for you to look at the correct parts of it, okay, and let us take a look at that one. Okay, so for this chromosome, okay, so this actually has the telomere at the top and also at the bottom for each of the so-called chromatid. Okay, so there are two chromatid for each chromosome. The middle part is called the centromere. Okay, you have the upper portion. Okay, two of them, the P arm, and the lower part is called the Q arm. So moving to the chromosome structure. So suppose you have here an example of a chromosome on the right side. So as I've already mentioned earlier that there are parts of it. Okay, so you have the chromatid and the middle part of the centromere. Okay, so telomere. Okay, as I've also indicated a while ago. So this is an example of a condensed, duplicated chromosome. If you're going to enlarge, okay, for example, the lower part or the Q arm, and looking at that, okay, you have the enlarged part, okay, so-called supercoiled DNA. So what does it mean? That inside of the chromatid are the materials called DNA. And from this supercoiled DNA, if you're going to again, okay, focus or enlarge that area, so one part of it, okay, you have the chromatin materials, and inside the chromatin materials, if you're going to again have enlarged it, okay, you have the histone. So each of these histones are actually have the coiled or this strand of DNA called the histones. Okay, so for each histones, Okay, of course, this strand of DNA is the main components of the structure of the each of the organism. Okay, so its structure is or the way that it is seen, of course, it's called double helix. Okay, so as you can see here, okay, so from the right side, okay, enlarging that, okay, it means to say that what you can see at the inside of it. Okay, so uh, particularly you can, of course, talking about the sizes, of course, chromatid is larger, and as you go into the inside of it, especially for the DNA part, so it's getting smaller. So you have here the condensed, okay, as I've mentioned, you condense the chromosome. Again, you have I told you a while ago, so it enlarged. Again, you can see here in this figure the supercoiled DNA. Then inside that is the chromatin, and inside of the chromatin is the DNA and histones, and inside of course of this DNA strand or this DNA and histones is the DNA double helix. Alright, so in this figure, this is another way of sharing with you the chromosome, and as I've detailed in terms of explanation earlier. Okay, so you have here the supercoils. Okay, so if you're going to go inside of the what's inside of that of the chromosome or the chromatid, so you're going to see the supercoils, and if you're going to look what is inside the supercoils are actually coils of nucleosome. So as I mentioned, okay, so this is another way of sharing with you how does it looks like. Okay, so it has here the histones, and for the strand of it, okay, you can see the DNA double helix. So proceeding to the main parts, okay, you have the one chromosome here. Okay, so there are two identical chromatids. Okay, so one is an exact copy of the other, and each contains one DNA molecule. The upper part is the P arm or the short arm structure. The middle is the centromere, constricted point of the chromosome, and the lower part is the Q arm or the long arm structure. Inside of that, as I've already explained very well, is the DNA molecule. So this DNA molecule contains the long string like DNA molecule formed into a compact structure by proteins called histones. Alright, so these are the following terms that you need to remember in terms of the parts of the chromosome. First, chromatids are two identical halves of a replicated chromosome after the synthesis phase or the S phase of the cell cycle. The second one is the centromere, the attachment points of the two chromatids of a chromosome. It is also described as the constriction point, which divides the chromosome into two sections or arms. The number three is short arm or P arm, the upper arms of the chromosome, which is usually shorter. And you have fourth, okay, so the Q arm, it is the lower arms of the chromosome, which is usually longer. Alright, so if you're going to remember, as I've explained, that the DNA is the identity of each organisms a while ago. So you have here an examples of tables in terms of the chromosomes and numbers of selected organisms. So these are examples. Take note also that the number of chromosomes in a cell is a characteristic of the species to which it belongs. For example, fruit flies have 8 chromosomes, while sunflowers have 34. This table 1 summarizes the chromosome numbers of some organisms. Okay, so as you can see here, the organisms on the left side, okay, so you have the fruit fly, okay, with the scientific names, and of course corresponding that on the right side are the chromosome numbers. So you have fruit fly 8. For the dog, there are 78 chromosome number, okay, or inside of that is the DNA combinations. You have this man, okay, or us, okay, so Homo sapiens, okay, 46 rice, okay, so this is 24 chromosome, and for the last one example is corn. So you have 20 chromosome number. I'm hoping that you've learned a lot for this lesson, okay, and have a wonderful day. Thank you so much.